Good morning. Mr. Packer and myself are out here and we're going to show you a few things with bees, hives, apiary business. So what I'm holding right here, right now, this is called a Pollinators jacket, okay? There is a lot of times people wear overalls, but I find them too cumbersome and drives me nuts to wear them, so I just wear a Pollinators jacket, okay? So all you do is just put it on like a regular old jacket. By the way, Mr. Packer is wearing one right now. And we just zip the thing up. And put your veil on, and on either side of your veil you have two zippers. One and two. You have a piece of Velcro that you just press down and it keeps all the bees out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get a smoker out. There's your smoker, okay? All right, so what we do is we have the smoker, we put some burlap in there, all right? And we're going to light that on fire. Little trick I like to use, little WD-40. Get our matches out. Let that burn a little bit. And then you just have to close the lid and you get your smoker going. Got to keep pumping it. Once you do, it'll start really getting going here. We use the smoker to calm the bees down, okay? So when we open a hive, we always have that smoker going so that they're not so crazy. Now the other thing I'm going to put on, my gloves, I've got gauntlets on them. That piece there to there is called a gauntlet, okay? And at the end are leather gloves. And I put it on the wrong arm. So we're going to try that again. There's elastic at the end up on top here that kind of keeps the bees out of you. Quite honestly, I could have come out here without a net and all of this on and probably been just fine to open these hives up. But I've been doing this a long time too, so I know how to not to disturb them too much, okay? Last thing I'm going to show you before we open up a hive, this is called a Hive Tool, all right? If you don't have this, you're in a world of hurt out here, all right? This is going to help me open up the hives when we look at them, okay? So we're going to open up a hive. First thing I always like to do, I take the smoker and I kind of smoke just around the entrance of where I'm going to open it up. If you look down here, there's a slit there, slit over there. That's the entrance to the hive. These two wider ones, this one and this one, those are called hive bodies, all right? That is where more than likely the queen is, and that's where they're going to lay most of their eggs, in these two here. The top one here, that's called a honey super, and that's where they will start storing their honey. Although down below, because they have young, they will also store some honey down there too. So let's open up a hive and we'll show you what the inside looks like. So we'll just take that top there. sit it there. And if you look right now, you'll see a bunch of bees up on top, right? What you're seeing there are all female bees. Those are all worker bees. They are programmed when they're born to do several different things. Some of them take care of the nursery or the young. Some of them are pollen and nectar gatherers. Some of them are cell makers. It just depends. But they're programmed early on to, when they're born, that's what they do. Most bees will last about 3 weeks to 4 weeks before they die. Some a little bit longer. But worker bees fly so far and need so much energy, they basically work themselves to death. Okay? And if you look at bees' wings compared to their body, they really weren't meant to fly. All right? So let's get a frame out.
That's what you needed the tool for, huh?
Right. Okay. So, I don't know if you can see that with the camera, but if you look in there, you're going to see some orange and some yellow. Hopefully that comes over on the camera.
It does.
Okay? Every bit of that is pollen. And this time of year, more than likely, it is coming from trees because we don't have a lot that's blooming. So this is pollen from trees. Okay? On the outside of this frame, right here, you will see they have capped some honey, and that's feed for the bees right there. All right? Now, without much bloom here, the reason being, I will show you where that comes from here in just a second. Now, I'm going to see if I can get this guy to cooperate. We'll just pick him. Okay, I'm going to put that back in. That is not a worker bee, that's a drone. That's a male bee. And you'll notice they're much bigger. I kind of squished him a little bit. But they're bigger than worker bees. That is a male bee right there. That's a drone. Okay? Now, we're going to pull this next one apart because I want to show you a brood or baby bees. Because this is a pretty strong hive. Looks like it's got, should have some baby bees down there. By the way, that probably weighs about 70 pounds right there. Okay? Now, I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to have Mr. Packer come around here. But on this far side, do you see a bunch of comb there? This black plastic thing is actually a tray. And while the bees are not making any honey right now, we feed them. We go over and we get these huge tanks from Pepsi-Cola Company in Warren, Wyoming. And all it is corn syrup. And we put these big tanks on the back of the truck, and we have a pump. And so we come out here this time of year when they're not making a lot of honey, and we fill this tray. The honey that you saw that I showed you a minute ago, that came from here. There's a float in here that the bees will go into, suck that nectar, the corn syrup out. They'll bring it and put it in other places in the hive. Okay? And that's where they get their honey from right now because we just don't have a lot of bloom. Here in the next 3 weeks, you'll see a lot of white clover, yellow clover, and the biggest thing that we make honey off of is hay or alfalfa. And everybody that lives out where we live, or you guys live out on the reservation, has seen alfalfa fields, and you'll see a purple flower on them. That's where they make most of their honey off of. So I'm going to see if I can find some brood for you. Okay? By the way, if you're wondering what this rag was or is, that had medication on it. Bees get sick too. They have a couple different things that they get. They get what's called viral mites. Okay? Viral mites attach themselves to the back of the bees, all right, and eat their way down into the bees and use them as a host. All right? They're pests. So this had medication on there to keep the mites at bay. The other thing that they get is called trachea mites. Trachea mites actually get inside the bee's throat. And to prevent that, you don't see it here, but we've medicated all these hives with a substance called terramycin. It's a powder. We sprinkled all that throughout the hives. If you don't, you get what's called foul brood. And foul brood will kill a whole hive. So they can get sick just like humans can too, so we have to prevent that.
Is that kind of like us getting a cold?
It is. Oh. It is. Just a virus. So Mr. Packer's going to film this here. If you'll look right here, see this brownish orangish patch right here. All right, that's called brood. Those are cat brood. Those are baby bees. Most of these bees will probably hatch here in the next few days. If you look around the edge, you will see some white. Those are bees that are in the pupa process right there. They haven't been capped. These bees right now, these worker bees, they are taking honey and pollen and they're feeding these cells, and then they'll cap it until the bee hatches. And I'll bet you probably can't see it, but I just looked in these open holes. They look black probably on the camera. There are brand new eggs already laid in there where bees have already hatched. Now the queen has laid new eggs, and she will do that throughout the summer. She'll lay eggs as long as the hive is healthy, which means if they're bringing back pollen, if they're bringing back honey, she knows that they need more and more and more workers. And so she'll work night and day laying eggs on all these different frames in here, and it'll be nothing but baby bees, okay? Now, unfortunately, you won't be able to see it today, but worker bees that go out and gather nectar, when they find a good source of nectar, they will come back to the hive and they actually do a dance. That dance tells other workers how far the nectar source is and in which direction. And that worker will do the dance several times, okay? So that the other bees start getting that, and then they know the direction and how far to go. So if Mr. Packer will kind of pan around over that way, if you notice, they've probably got less than 1/8 of a mile in some places. There's not an alfalfa field right here, but the next one down where that black building of some sort is down there, that's an alfalfa field down there. That will start blooming, so they don't have horribly far to fly. That's why we put our bees where we put them, because most people around Fremont County grow a lot of hay, so that bees do not have to fly that far. Bees will fly up to 3.5 miles just to find nectar, okay? Which is an awful long way for such a little insect, but they'll do it. So we try to get them as close to the source as we can. And as you can see down there, like Mr. Packer just showed you, there are a couple alfalfa fields that they can get to. We're looking at the brood again right here. You see the orange brownish color. That's good brood. They got a good queen in there and she's laying eggs. So what happens is if the queen dies or the queen is not a good layer, they will actually raise their own queen. The problem with that is it takes a while to raise a queen because it's a completely different kind of cell. You won't see it on here because they have a queen. They have a queen cell. What they put inside that queen cell is called royal jelly. Royal jelly is only fed to queen cells so that they become queens. It's an enzyme that comes out of bees and turns the larva into a queen. So what we do instead is I'll cut those queen cells out and we will put a new queen in. When we get back to our honey house, I'll show you where the queens come from and how we do it. The reason we do it that way is it takes about 2 or 3 days for the hive to accept the queen, and instead of 2 or 3 weeks to grow their own queen. So we just speed up the process. The only problem with that is every single queen that we put in, a new one, they cost $35. So you have to be a little bit sparing with the queens, and hopefully you have good queens in all the hives. So that's what we do to replace a queen. All right, so we are inside the honey house right now. Just came back in from the bee yard. What you're looking at here are stacks and stacks and stacks of honey supers. And at this time of the year, the bees aren't making a lot of honey, so we just keep them here in the warehouse. But here in about 2 weeks, the honey flow will really starting to happen because there'll be a lot of bloom out there. Almost every single super that you see in here is going to be gone. They will all be out on the bee yards and on top of those hives that we showed you, and that's where they will store their honey. If you look underneath a couple of stacks here, down at the bottom, they all sit on pallets, and if you notice that out there, they sit on pallets. We take a forklift. We used to have to lift everything ourselves. Now we put them on pallets and we just lift them with a forklift and put them right on top of the truck. So it's not quite as labor intensive as it used to be.
Yep.
So these here are what I was telling you about that we feed out of. We get these from Pepsi-Cola over in Warland, and it's just corn syrup. So we put these on a pallet, we lift them up, put them on top of the truck, hook the pump into it, put a hose down in there, and then we can feed each one of the hives until they can start feeding themselves. Because there's just not enough bloom out there right now for the bees to make a living.
You can see some of the syrup left over in this one, right?
Absolutely.
That one still has some left in the bottom.